Come get ready with me. Now here I have my #1 beauty product, aka Salon Paws. Can't go a day without one. Here's like when you get that fresh packet feeling. Here's like a little ASMR moment for us. Nothing like that crinkle and that little menthol-y, eucalyptus-y smell. Just a little peely moment. Just gonna really get it off there. Yeah, just like that. Now, normally I don't put it on with my bra if I'm thinking correctly, but I'm trying for some sort of semblance of modesty while filming this, so my bad. So yeah, you just can't get enough of them. I'm going for 4 this time. This time around. Initially, I was putting on about 2 a day, and then I realized could get more coverage with 4. Look at my almost there back muscles. No falling. Yeah, no falling. Trying to give you the full impression of all 4. To let you know how I get through the day. XOXO, let's go girls. Trying to see if it's gonna peel off or not. And some of the nude back. Yeah, you can see it's a lovely beige tone like my skin. And yeah, ready to start the day. Ready to get ready with me. One day in the middle of what was going to be a regular checkup, a regular appointment, except this time he was like, okay, so now we're gonna start talking about planning the surgery. I'm not going to lie, the concept of having surgery was pretty scary for me. More than scary, actually. Like, I didn't even know at that time that surgery was like an option, or that we were leading up to something like that. At 12 years old, while I did have some sort of anxiety that made me worry about kid things that kids worry about, like having to go to swim lessons when I'm terrified of my swim instructor, or having to get vaccines when school season starts up again in September. Like, I wasn't thinking one day I'm going to have incredibly invasive corrective back surgery so that I'm not like this anymore. Perhaps even more unfortunately, that was an appointment that my dad had taken me to. Normally I would go with my mom, and in this case my dad was the one who was left to handle me suddenly getting really emotional in the doctor's office during what we assumed would be a regular routine back visit, to find out, oh, surgery is the goal, that is the thing, and I didn't even know. That goes back to what I was saying about my parents, like doing their best to let me have a normal childhood by keeping certain things from their anxious child. Some things definitely made sense. Like, I'm glad that I wasn't spending most of my time worried about some eventual surgery. I'm definitely glad that I can't blame them for not wanting that to be my fate, worrying about that every time I squished myself into my brace and saddled myself in for the night. I'm glad that wasn't my main concern. But it was now a concern. Now, this was not my first rodeo when it came to surgery. When I was around 6 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night just feeling like awful, like rubbish. Like, basically, I was like, oh, I have a stomach ache. Like, you know how kids tend to have these a little bit more often. Also, the previous day, my mom and her friend were baking some cookies and, you know, doing the whole thing where it's like, you can't have the dough, you'll get sick. And I, being a little scamp, did have some of the dough. So some part inside of me was like, oh crap. I've done this to myself.
I can't believe you've done this.
So I did not immediately tell my parents that I wasn't feeling well. In fact, yeah, I didn't tell them. I just continued to try to get comfortable. Like, I remember shifting and turning a lot, until finally it got to the point where, like, I could not fall back asleep at all. I just felt so bad that eventually I had to come over and be like, you know, like that thing where kids are like, I'm not feeling good. And it was the wee hours of the morning. And then my mom had to go to work and my dad had to stay home with me. And that's when I started vomiting and just, they thought maybe I had the flu. We weren't sure what was going on with me. And we took me to the doctors. And I remember, like, the doctor kept, like, you know, they're doing all these tests, they're trying to figure stuff out, and he would push on my abdomen, and it would hurt like heck, but I wouldn't say it was hurting, because I didn't want to get in trouble. And I didn't want to have to do it, like, it was this whole back and forth thing, until finally the doctor was like, I'm pretty sure she has appendicitis, and if we don't do something about this, it's going to burst. And I had to be rushed to the hospital. Yeah, and that just reminds me of, on top of like a host of reasons why living in the past would have been such a bad idea, I'm like, the number of ways I would have died before I even hit puberty. Good Lord. So I had experience having surgery before, but that experience had been mostly, I don't feel good, I feel really bad, I'm in the hospital, hospitals are scary, I'm being rushed to have surgery, that's really scary, my mom's there, she's trying to tell me a story to distract me, I'm suddenly being rushed in, it's like the Madeline, like, I can do anything. And then I'm like, whoop, wake back up, totally doped, get to have as many popsicles as I want, watch Madeline on TV. You know what, all in all, not bad. The healing experience, not that great, but the hospital experience afterwards, not that bad. So like, 12-year-old me is beginning to remember those things with my dad back at the back doctor's office, and I'm slowly going like, okay, maybe I can do this. I've been in the hospital before, you know, it wasn't fun, the lead up, but like, it wasn't that bad. I got to just eat popsicles and stuff. That was fine. So like, actually, I was way more concerned after that about the lead up to the surgery, because I was gonna have to have blood drawn. And like, anything to do with needles, I'm just not good with. So I was like way more concerned after that point about having to get my blood drawn than I was about the actual like surgery part. We would have to do it in like little segments because I couldn't have like, you know, too much taken at once. I was always an incredibly slight person, and like we found out pretty fast that like when you would go to take my blood, and in a lot of cases you're not supposed to eat before you have your blood drawn, so my blood sugar would be very low, I'm very skinny, I'm very anxious, I would have the blood drawn, and then I would immediately faint. Or I would just suddenly get like, oh, it feels so good, Mr. Stark, and then I'd be out. And the nurse would be like, why do I always get the fainters or something like that, which did happen once. And I heard her. You know, your parents are people that can, generally speaking, give blood for you for the surgery and stuff in case anything goes horribly wrong. Then come to find out, that my parents were in the UK during the 80s and early 90s in the height of the mad cow disease scare, which, if you don't know anything about that, there's this whole thing to do with like, you know, bad meat, you know, this whole complex thing, which meant basically, at least in the US, I mean, I'm sure in the UK potentially, maybe, that they could not give blood. Legally, they could not give me their blood. So, I had to give me the blood. So that was not fun, if you know what I'm saying. Not a big fan of that. See if I totally F it up here, because I probably will. Not the worst. Do you ever use your viewfinder to do your eyeliner? Also, I need glasses, so like I can't fully tell if it's good or not, but it doesn't seem horrendous. So in the lead up to the surgery, you know, I had more talks with my parents. My parents are, you know, they're believers, they're Christians. We would go to Christian conferences where people could pray for you for healing, and we would go and pray and see what could happen. And my parents were personally and privately very scared for me. My mom expressed later that she felt like the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac, and like being told that you were going to have to give up your only child. I was not the only child, but the oldest child. But having to give up your child, like, she felt like she was gonna have to sacrifice me. Like this whole uncertainty of what was going to happen. Not to mention the fact that they had met as missionaries in the UK. My dad, at the time, did not have his full college degree, which he ended up doing later. My mom's a dental hygienist, works part-time. This was not exactly a, oh yeah, we can afford a like tens of thousands surgery. No big deal, we can do that. Like, but of course, like, that wasn't going to come into it, because like the concern was that my back, which was like this and like this, like that I was just gonna keep twisting, and like my insides, especially around puberty, the word was gonna F with my uterus, and like all this shit that like, it was just like, you had to do it. That was what we were being told. Like the degrees of my back and all of it, they were like, it's going to only make your life worse if you don't do this. This is what we have to do. The time comes for my surgery. My mom actually had tried to, like I've said before, that my mom had to deal with me being unable to sleep. But the night before my actual surgery, she was unable to sleep. And she tried to actually sneak in my room and see if I'd go off and try to get food with her really early in the morning. And I was so dopey, I barely heard her. Now I wish I did, because that would have been really fun. But at the time, it didn't connect. So I ended up going to the hospital at St. Joseph's in Orange County and going through with the surgery, where while my parents were in the waiting room watching all of the Lord of the Rings movies, which they brought with them because they were told it would take that much time. And I'm out. Like, I don't remember shit. Like, stuff was happening. And I end up in the ICU, which is fairly normal when you're talking about somebody that's just had a massive invasive surgery, a massive invasive procedure. And without getting super graphic, what they did was they opened me from around here to around my navel and around the side, which I demonstrated earlier. And they were moving the back as much as they could to get it straight, and they even took parts of my ribs, because when you are still going through puberty, you are still growing. So they could take parts of my ribs and know that the bone would continue to grow afterwards. There was still a lot that they didn't know, so we also went to this like renowned surgeon in LA, and we went to him, and we went to the OC person, and we went around, and eventually they decided on the person that they originally had, because they felt like they had a better connection, and like that he cared about me and all of that. And so I had the surgery, and I was like out of it after that. Like, I was in the hospital, like, even though my surgery was in St. Joseph's, it's connected to CHOC, which is Children's Hospital of Orange County. And so I actually had a tour earlier where they showed me all the fun stuff about CHOC, and like how there's like a toy room and all this stuff, and you know how you can walk around with your IV bag and come hang out with the other kids, and you know, all the food and all the stuff. It's very colorful and not like scary hospital-y. But needless to say, I didn't use any of it. Like, I couldn't move on my own. I felt real bad, and my relatives came to visit me, and I don't remember most of it, but I do know that that was like the start of me around that time of just being mean. Like, when you watch TV or movies that have like a snotty little 12 or 13-year-old, and they're just like a junior higher, and they're just being kind of an a-hole, or just really sullen and all of that. Like, my introduction to being 13 in early July, then going straight into surgery at the end of July of that year, was me going from being a mostly kind of goofy kid to being just like sullen and unhappy, mostly because I was in pain. I think because of that, I have a greater appreciation for people, like older people or homeless people, or just people that you see that just seem to just be there to ruin everyone's day, and you just can't make them happy, and they're just difficult to be around, and you don't know why. And I think what it is like, when someone's in pain, they're operating on a level that is not the same as like the average person. And so like if you had like a scale, like a lot of people with disabilities have a scale, where like a spoon scale or whatever, where they say, this is how much I can handle, and this is how much I cannot handle. But I mean, like, if you were on a scale of like, this is when I'm operating at my best capacity, my best self, and this is when I'm operating at my worst self. I feel like when you're in pain, you're already at the middle line, and you have to really work really hard to work better than neutral baseline, like okay self. Otherwise, it's very easy, especially when the pain is severe, or like there are other factors that are making your day worse, or mentally or otherwise, that then your day's just operating at a worse level, like you're just not your best self. And so add to that I was just an immature kid that was barely able to take my pain medication because they were afraid of overdosing me for being so small. And also just like, I was very picky, and I was unable to like eat most things without vomiting it at that time. I just was not able to keep food down. So like, just add all those factors in, and I was just an unhappy kid.